Let's have a look here anyway at an article, a recent article. I'll give you the link in the sidebar it's about Elizabeth Broderick speaking frankly, apparently, with Jackie somebody or other, on Lifestyle Yahoo, Mary Claire News and News and Views, just a few days back. Jackie, this is all about sexual harassment, by the way. I'm talking about Elizabeth Broderick, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, and her experience with sexual harassment, apparently. Jackie, what are some examples of sexism you encountered as a lawyer? You recently spoke about the subject. Elizabeth, I launched a major sexual harassment campaign, and it was the first time I had told my own story around sexual harassment. Every woman has one. I was a junior lawyer trying to make my way. I was invited to a small function of the firm's top clients, and so excited to be included because I was the most junior in the room. One of the firm's most important clients was there, and afterwards he proceeded to ring me every few days. He wanted me to go out to lunch and dinner, and I was faced with a choice. I could say no and risk the firm losing one of their largest clients, or I could go along. Do you hear that? This is the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. He wanted me to go out to lunch or dinner, and I was faced with a choice. I could say no and risk the firm losing one of their largest clients, or I could go along. So, basically, she had to choose, didn't she, between two evils, to remain a passive doormat. She couldn't say no, could she? No. She had no assertive tongue in her head, did she? No. Was she a geisha? I mean, was she expected to be a geisha? A geisha? Was she helpless? Was she a hostess? Did he have her over a barrel? Oh, he had me over a barrel. Did he have her over a barrel? Were men to blame because you wouldn't say no? You said, I was faced with a choice. I could say no and risk the firm losing one of their largest clients, or I could go along. To whom was your loyalty? To yourself or the firm? Really? It wasn't really a choice, of course. I had to go along, which I did. This is what she said. This is what the Sex Discrimination Commissioner said. It wasn't really a choice, of course. I had to go along, which I did, and got the usual story. My wife doesn't understand me, blah, blah, blah. Then he continued to ring at work. I did what most women do, spoke to my girlfriends and devised a scheme that every time he rang, he would be diverted to one of them who would tell him I wasn't available. We did that for a week, and the calls started to stop. I'd say she had a passive approach. She didn't say no, basically. She gave him a mixed message, possibly. It's amazing, isn't it, that this is coming from the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. In my situation, because it was a client harassing me, it wasn't even sexual harassment under the law. I felt I couldn't use any complaints mechanism because he was friends with other people in the firm. You know, you were silenced. So she felt, and she was silenced. She felt she was silenced. She had no tongue in her head, did she? She wouldn't say no. Felt, that means her own doormathood and her own psychology. Silenced. She had no tongue in her head, apparently. Jackie, this is the person interviewing her. Did you feel shame? This is Elizabeth Broderick, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner. Yeah, I did, that is. Yeah, I did feel shame. Yeah, I did. But also I started not to love the job I had loved. I didn't want to come to work because I feared what would happen and how it would affect me. She didn't want to come to work. What was her work? Was her work as a geisha, hostess? And so men are to blame because she didn't want to be a geisha, hostess. So men are to blame for that situation, where it's most clear to me that she didn't assertively say no. I was faced with a choice. I could say no and risk the firm losing one of her largest clients, or I could go along. Amazing. She couldn't see any choice. It sounds like a doormat to me. It sounds like a doormat who remained silent and just quiescently do whatever the system wants her to do. To remain a passive doormat, I've suggested. She couldn't say no. No assertive tongue in her head. Was she a geisha? Was she employed as a geisha? If she wasn't employed as a geisha, she didn't have to go along. She didn't. She didn't have to have dinner with anybody. She didn't. She didn't. She wasn't helpless. She could have said no. Did he have her over a barrel? Did he? Men are to blame because you wouldn't say no. That's a question I've asked. It wasn't really a choice. Of course, I had to go along, which I did. I had to go along. I had to go along, she said. I had to go along. I had to go along. It wasn't really a choice. So it wasn't really a choice to be a geisha, but you had to go along. You couldn't say no, you couldn't be assertive, and so men are to blame. I felt I couldn't use any complaints mechanism. You were silenced. You had no tongue in your head, dearie, did you? You had no tongue in your head. You felt. You felt as a doormat feels. You didn't say no. You went along to dinner with him because you just didn't say no. You couldn't say no, did you? And you didn't say no to the company either. Oh, did you not have any scruples? You just went along. You went along. You didn't have any scruples. You didn't have any ethics. You just went along to be with somebody you didn't want to be with. You sound like you acted like a geisha to me. That's what it sounds like. And men are to blame for that. Men are to blame, apparently. It's nothing to do with women being to blame too. Women who act like geishas. Nothing to do with women being to blame as well. It's a suggestive set-up, the workplace. It involves men and women. Anyway, she felt her own doormathood and her own psychology. She felt she could do nothing. She felt she was silenced. She kept her mouth shut, in other words. She kept her mouth shut and just went along and did what other people wanted. She had no tongue in her head. And she felt shame in the end for how she behaved. Apparently. She felt shame. Yeah, I did. She felt shame. Well, I say again, she was not a geisha, and I say, I can't see men as being entirely to blame if she didn't say no. And that was a little bit of a little bit extracted from an article, an interview with the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Elizabeth Broderick. See ya.